Let's see. We are ready to start. Yeah, let's do the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all so much. And if we could go ahead and do a roll call. I think everybody has their intent.
Councilmember Hurtak,
Here.
Yanika Mills,
Here.
Kevin O'Hare, David Hay,
Here.
Christian Leon,
Here.
Danielle Riffenberg,
Here.
Larry Josephson,
Here.
Casey Bauer,
Here.
Rebecca Hessinger. Omar Perzada, Bobby Edwards. Yeah, right. Is there anybody from Hart present?
No.
Thank you. Jason Jackman,
Here.
Bob Frey, Nicole Dufa,
She's in the audience right now. Sitting right in her.
okay. Gloria Marbalangia,
Here.
Sarah Templeman, Una Johnson,
I'm here.
Catherine Coyle,
Here.
Arizona Jenkins, Gus Ignis,
Here.
Ashley Anderson, Debbie Roney. We do have hold on, let me do a quick count. We do have an in-person quorum.
Thank you so much. And Kevin O'Hare also has just joined us. I'll put it in the chat in case you. Oh, okay, great. Do we have any public comment today? We got a lot of folks, but I think everybody is here to. Yeah. Sure. Nope. Okay. Anyone have anything for approval of the minutes? Any changes? If not, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Okay, Kevin made a motion and a second from David. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, minutes have been taken or approved. On to our action items. What? That's you? What? It's open. You think that presenting to the virtual world? Just realizing how big my arms are.
Lisa, we're not seeing the room as an FYI, so I don't know that the owl is working.
Okay, Lionel's fixing it currently.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you, though. I love it. Such a cute thing. They do kind of look like owls. Okay. Oh, you have. I was gonna say I was gonna start something else. But
We have full screen online now. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, we're just getting
Okay.
Technology feels like it's like this.
Well,
And while we're waiting, does anybody have any old business from us? Just like, okay,
I call it Triple L Day. It's Lisa's last livable.
years.
Thank you so much
Several
for
as a
every,
member.
thank you so much for everything you've done for us.
And Connor McDonald, is your replacement liaison. So he's been in training for the last several months and I'm still here. I'm just handing over the reins to him. So, transition to him, but I'm here for backups and anything he needs or you need.
Well, congratulations on, the next steps and welcome, Connor. We're happy to have you.
I hope to have more time to pursue the safety projects that
Yeah.
are very hard to do with balancing a committee.
Excellent, excellent. Anyone else with anything old? Okay, Gus.
Hi, Lisa sent me the Dale Mabry pedestrian bridge. I thought I was here when this was passed, but it looks like they want to build this south of 275, which doesn't connect to the existing bike paths, bike trails, and doesn't connect to the two major sources of commerce, which are the shopping center at Walmart and the shopping center at Target across the street. They want to build it south of there, which doesn't connect to any existing trails and doesn't seem to take advantage of what seems to be open space on the north side of the highway. So some future discussion about where they're going to place this pedestrian bridge, how it doesn't connect to anything, and it was designed before Midtown was put in. So it looks like it's going to come down on the south side, right in the middle of the Midtown lake, which is not connecting to anything. So I'd like to open discussion at some point in the future about putting it maybe on the north side where it's connecting to trails, where it's connects to places of commerce. I know this is something that looks like it was discussed in like 2017. With the current construction that is taking place and development and the existing trail. I'd like to have that discussion reopened, especially with some communication with Kevin. But go ahead.
Okay, well, the request was for this study. I'm sorry that I didn't provide all the surrounding adjacent studies that feed into it. So I can assure you that it was designed to connect to existing facilities and those that are planned. And the Midtown development was in concept and site plan stage. So it comes down where they requested it and it ties into, and they agreed to allow it to tie into the trail system that they provided as a private sector. But because that's private, it's not part of the public portion. And yes, many alternatives were considered north, south, adjacent, a different intersect, like before that one was the approved location. You may predate your membership. So I'll get you in touch with the bike ped staff planners because they have all those adjacent ones. In fact, it ties into that Spruce Street project that we talked about. All of that is a comprehensive master plan for trails and greenways, and that's a little tiny segment of it. So eventually the goal of the whole thing and will occur is that you're going to get from West Shore and beyond all the way to downtown. Street's one of the segments, and then we want multiple, not just one connection between the two major job centers. So we're slowly building that out. Some of it's part of the Centrail system, some part of it is part of the TPO's tip, project. Some of it is the West Shore is going to fund and do, and, and some of it, City of Tampa is pursuing. So that big comprehensive thing, maybe a future topic that could come to the committees. But at the very least, I'll get you in touch with the bike head staff members are familiar with all of that master plan so that you can understand how it fits in the bigger picture.
Okay, it looks like the owl is on, so I think you can
Okay,
start.
thanks for patiently waiting.
Yeah.
Good morning, Ryan Birchall, TPO staff. Today I'll be presenting on ETD.
Is your mic on
project,
by any chance?
Icon.
Yeah, hit the mic, but I will warn you that on and off, you're competing with the air conditioner, so you're gonna have to project if you're in a stadium, regardless, okay? The outline can hear you great because they have the mic, but in the room cannot, so project.
Okay. Good morning, Wyatt Birchall, TPO staff. Today I'll be presenting on ETDM project, Salmon Expressway extension from south of Big Bend Road to US 301. ETDM stands for Efficient Transportation Decision Making, as many of you know. And it is the process to assess potential impacts of transportation projects in natural built and sociocultural environments. We're currently in the programming screening phase to provide input prior to the project development and design. Today, we are looking for your initial thoughts on the project based on its initial screening and its relation to existing plans and studies. These will inform our comments to FDOT as part of the ETDM process. First, I'll provide an overview of the project and its potential effects based on data provided through FDOT's environmental screening tool. This will include a breakdown of the natural, physical, cultural, and community resources potentially impacted based on applying a 500-foot project area buffer to study this. Second, I'll provide feedback and recommendations from staff. And third, there will be an opportunity for questions and comments. The Tampa Hillsborough Expressway Authority, THEA, is exploring an extension of the expressway. The proposed consideration would create a 4-lane, 2 in each direction, elevated toll roadway within the median of US 301. No connection to I-75 will be evaluated as part of this proposal. However, the portion of the existing Salmon Expressway at the US 301 east to I-75 ramp termini is being evaluated for future improvements. Reconstruction or widening of US 301 may be required with no to minimum right-of-way anticipated. There are 3 segments. Segment 1 from Bloomingdale Avenue to, from Salmon Expressway to Bloomingdale Avenue. Segment 2, Bloomingdale Avenue to Gibsonton Drive at Boyette Road. And segment 3, Gibsonton Drive to Boyette Road to south of Big Bend Road. The proposed extension spans a 10-mile distance traversing through or proximate to the communities of Palm River, Riverview, Brandon, Progress Village, and Gibsonton. US 301 project corridor is a divided 6-lane, 3-lane in each direction roadway. You can see here the existing roadway classifications and accommodations. Based on the advanced notification package submitted on behalf of THEA, the project's impetus is noted on the screen here and focuses on a stated purpose of reducing congestion, improving mobility of US 301, US 41, I-75, and local adjacent arterial roads.
and to improve safety for vehicles, pedestrians, and bicyclists along US 301. The project proposes to accommodate future growth in the surrounding area. Shown on the screen, you can see crash data by type and mode from 2018 to 2022. Here you can see some social considerations. The advanced notification packet considered the following facility types. US 301 is identified by FDOT as a regional freight mobility corridor throughout the project limits. There is limited transit service along the corridor, and bicycle and pedestrian accommodations were previously noted. You can see on this slide, there are considerations for recreational and protected lands. The project area is characterized primarily by commercial and residential areas, developed land with several sections of undeveloped land scattered throughout the project limits. The future land use maps for Hillsborough County show future land use designations as being primarily mixed use and residential. The National Wetlands the National Wetlands Inventory data set of the EST GIS analysis identified the following significant surface waters and wetlands within 500 feet of the project area. Here you can see the breakdown by type of surface waters and wetlands. Pictured on the right is the Alfaya River from the US 301 crossing. The following slides will address the proposed project's consistency with TPO and planning commission plans and studies and staff recommendations. As part of our review, we considered land use and transportation factors. Regarding Vision Zero and speed management action plans, part of this segment is included as a high entry network corridor. US 301 from Icebreaker 5 to Adamo Drive is identified in the Vision Zero action plan as part of the top 20 severe crash corridors in Hillsborough County for all nodes. While no trails or trailheads were identified in the safe access to park study, the real choices when not driving needs assessment for the 2050 LRTP did recognize that US 301 Canal to Alafaya and the US Highway 301 trail as planned trails for future considerations. We looked at other plans and studies not mentioned here, such as the non-discrimination and equity plan. It is also worth noting that this project is currently being considered as part of the 2050 LRTP development. Staff analysis of the future land use element focused on maintaining level of service of existing roadway networks, minimizing impacts through avoidance of incompatible land uses, and through adoption of mitigation measures such as buffering, screening, and sound barriers, and through appropriate site planning techniques. Staff analysis also highlights policy supportive of citizen inclusion throughout the project update, such for roadway project updates such as the 301 extension, and recognize the project limits fall within the urban service area with considerable variation in future. Staff identified the following objectives and policies from the comprehensive plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County for consideration in making forming recommendations These include topics related to the project's potential effects and features such as urban service area, growth management strategy, provision of public facilities and transportation for guiding development activities, and neighborhood and community development. US 301 either travels through or acts as a border for the following community plans: Brandon, Greater Palm River, Riverview, Apollo Beach, Sun City Center, South Shore area-wide systems, and Waimama. These plans acknowledge US 301 as a major mobility facility and do so with varying degrees of policy. The existing Riverview Community Plan contains 3 district types, which are located within the project limits. These districts envision a development. Those are the 301 corridor, the downtown and mixed use districts, which envision a development pattern that supports walkable mixed use development, supported by a downtown along and in proximity to the US 301 corridor at the Alpine River. In March 2024, the Board of County Commissioners instructed Planning Commission staff to update the Riverview Community Plan, focusing on land use and mobility within the corridor. This planning project is being scoped now and will not begin until the fall of 2024. The update will be a joint undertaking with partners at FDOT, DIA, and Hillsborough County. Staff identified the following goals from the Livable Communities element of the comprehensive plan for the Riverview Community Plan. The vision outline for the 301 corridor is for an aesthetically pleasing and pedestrian friendly areas through implementation of landscaping guidelines for roadways in Hillsborough County and through mixed use town centers, appropriate mixed use, as well as appropriate lighting and additional east-west pedestrian crossings are also seen as goals for the corridor. The staff recommendations focus on maintaining and developing safe trails and sidewalks and improving mobility through complete street guidelines, Vision Zero principles, and measuring progress through the countermeasures toolbox. Staff also recommend promoting integrated land uses to enhance connectivity and to avoid and minimize neighborhood impacts, and also include residents in the project process. It's also noted to align project development with the goals, objectives, and policies outlined in the future of Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated county and for the existing Riverview Community Plan to ensure harmonious and consistent development that promotes transportation. We're requesting a motion to provide comments to FDOT as part of the ETV process. With that, hopefully you're ready to hear me. Being as loud as I could. We'll take questions and comments that you have.
Anyone have questions or comments? Gus?
Sure. Just to clarify, this is going to be similar to the Gandy extension that it's built in the middle of the road and it's elevated above. But that one is only 2 lanes. But I've never driven on it because I used to live at Gandy and Dale Mabry for 15 years. Then they built the highway after I moved away. So I've never been on that extension, but I think it's not large enough for 2 lanes in each direction, correct? So the Gandy is only 1 lane in each direction, and it's a pretty huge infrastructure. So now you're gonna build 2 lanes in each direction. You need a breakdown lane on the inside, on the outside. So it pretty much would cover the entire road, correct? The overstructure.
Yeah, I think it's helpful to note this is a very preliminary. There's not an official design at this point or a PDD study. Based on the materials so far, they are expecting this to happen fully within the existing right of way. There may be right of way needs identified at a later stage, but at this point, the proposal would be to have this be built fully within the 301.
Okay, and because it is there, this is a complete toll road, correct?
Yes, yes.
We can't speak to what any of that is. This is the early, it's a concept. And so this is the very early. So they look at projects early and decide whether they're feasible and what needs to be in the final design, et cetera. We happen to have it be a representative that's super familiar, but the ETDM process does not have details. It's purposely like, they don't spend a lot of money on all of figuring this stuff out because then you kind of need to figure out whether it's a viable project and what type of project would need to be. And then you see the like project development and environment package and the early design and stuff. So this is a very early. So Wyatt wouldn't know that
Okay.
detail.
Would you
Huh?
like me to?
But yeah,
Well,
it's up to the chair, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Gus, do you have anything else?
The only other thing is, I know David lives down in that area, so.
Yeah, he wants to comment. So
Yeah.
David, he has a question. Sorry, he has a question.
Well, Bob, did you want to address anything?
Yeah.
I was just gonna answer a question if they had. You know, as Wyatt said, right now we are not even in the PDD phase, which probably will not start first of the year. Well, there are 2 things there's some constraints as a toll authority that we have. Yes, it will be a toll road if the is 100% operating it because that's how we fund it. The second piece is it will be in the median with FDOT, which allows it to be cost feasible. Whether it's going to be elevated or at grade remains to be seen, as Lisa was saying, through the PD&E process. During the PD&E process, we will do design traffic, which will delve very deeply into what we expect in the corridor, and that will then look at the design, and we'll come up with a preferred alternative, which will then go out to the communities and get comment. So the Gandy is built as a 2 lanes right now, but it is wide enough to be striped as a 4 lane. The difference being Gandy is only 1.5 miles to 2 miles long. So we don't need that additional, we don't need additional 12-foot shoulders or something along those lines. US 301 you would, because it would be much longer segments. So that is the two pieces that I saw that were a little bit. Number one, the Selman Expressway goes from Brandon to Gandy. This would connect with the Selman. What this would be or what would be called in the future remains to be seen, but it is not. It's a US 301 extension project on Wyman project right now. And the other thing, like I said, is it does not necessarily will be at elevate the whole segment. But I can answer whatever any other questions that anybody has now.
David?
And this might be too early, or the study, did it look at the ammonia pipeline that runs up and down that corridor? There's a major ammonia pipeline underneath the, right aside of the road there. So I would assume that would, and again, in some future design would need to be moved. Or
What kind of pipeline?
it's an ammonia pipeline from the port that runs to the south.
There are different levels of PD&E. Here, which is a project level, which would be something like lighting that we can do internally with the city and we would sign off on it. A SEER would be a state level. That way it goes through Tallahassee and we work with the District 7 and they're sign off. We are doing a NEPA level, which is the highest level at the federal level, and will go to Tallahassee and be signed off with FDOT, US DOT on sign off as well. So we will be doing this to the
highest standards of the PD&E because that allows us to try for access for federal funds and things along those lines to help offset the cost. That also means that it would have a much more stringent, higher bar on not only the analysis, but also the public comment and what we have to do to make sure that we're addressing those types of issues. So yes, hazardous areas and hazardous types that would be taken into consideration and identified as part of the PD&E. When this is done, if it turns out that it's something that the county wants to do, and if it turns out that it's something that they can do, and they decide to go forward with it, we will do an investment grade traffic and revenue study. An investment grade study is at a level that we can sell municipal bonds off of it. It's basically, once it's done, we go to Wall Street and sell the bonds, and point being that the traffic and revenue has to be pretty tight, that we can pay what we say we're gonna pay, and that it is safe and things along those lines. So there's a lot of steps coming up, and they're very at the highest level steps, that nothing's being done here at a lower level, because we do want, you know, if the USDOT or FHWA can be involved and help offset it, we definitely would love to, you know, investigate that if things along those lines.
And kind of another question regarding, and I know this is probably too early, I'm just curious, when does the theory of induced demand come into the process, either the models or something like that, about the induced demand of, as we increase our roadways and the widening of our roadways, we actually increase the amount of traffic on the road. The theory is there's a short relief of like, this is great, the road is wide open and more people are attracted to it, and then it's clogged again.
There's a theory.
We've seen that with 75 or multiple expansions. They keep saying it's going to be, oh, no more traffic, and then it ends up being back to where it was again. So I mean, I'm wondering when that comes into the process.
Well, the models will take into effect based on land use and based on people's trips that are there. We will go out and just to put it in perspective that when we built the Selling West, the Gandy, for example, our reversible lanes, we went out and did 14 to 50 counts to validate the models to make sure that what the model is saying is close to, you know, what is being done. So in terms of induced demand, there's induced demand and there's unmet demand. We don't really get into whether or not it's induced or unmet. We're looking at the traffic engineering model and process, what the volumes look like to be in the future based on what we're seeing today, the land uses that are approved, and the trips that those land uses generate. So it's really not something that plays into.
Do you then look at the unmet needs in terms of transit as well, the possibility of transit? Because it seems like if you're just thinking about the movement of people, it sounds like you're only looking at cars.
We actually, and we've sponsored at the MPO that transit be included in all of our projects. So we do a stops analysis. We've already reached out to Hart. Hart will be taking part. We're looking at bus rapid transit along this corridor. We as a toll, we're an infrastructure provider and operator. They're the service provider. We work with them to try to provide that. So yes, it would definitely be that. Right now on the Selman, we have several Hart bus. No, I want to get into definitions on bus rapid transit, but we definitely have transit routes that are working with that, and we've already reached out to them, and we'll be working with them as part of it and want them to take part in, as well as the community plans, which we've reached out with. We've been working with Melissa and Jay over at the Planning Commission to take part in the community outreach. So yes, we are taking transit into consideration and working with Hart on what's the best way to do that.
No, that's not the question. The question is, are you looking at transit when you're looking at this induced demand, or as you called it, net demand?
Yes, well, yes, ma'am. The model takes transit into consideration into the corridor, and we can show higher levels of transit in the future, which will then affect the model or the actual. So we'll show the actual, and then they will model that. So if there is a service that part wants to run on this 301 project, we can build that into the model and have that.
It's not a want, this is, if you're looking at moving people, you have to look at what would it be if you had transit there, like moving people, transit moves people faster, moves more people faster. So that's, I mean, I'm trying to, Kevin, you're next, so maybe you can help get out what I'm trying to say.
My question, I guess, and thanks for answering some of these. Sorry, you're stumped with this. But for your revenue forecasting and for your ridership forecasting, if you look at the SES or SEIS for this area, I know Department of Transportation is looking at putting in express toll lanes on I-75. How much of that potential revenue is, how much of that is impacting your revenue forecasting and your ridership, considering that both roads are right next to one another and both roads will have managed lanes and both roads will be looking to recuperate their investment?
Well, the first step in the process would be with the coal sketch planning. Viability. Is there a viable path for a toll road? Toll roads are great tools in certain areas, but they only work in certain areas. You've got to have the ridership for the user fees to make them work. So it's just one piece of the toolbox. The first piece with the viability is we would look at constructability. Can you build it in the corridor, and what the traffic and revenue would look like? So yes, I-75 is taken into consideration on that and what it would do for I-75 and this, and making sure that there is enough revenue to basically over a 30-year period to pay for it and make it within the range of being viable. So yes, it is taken into consideration.
Yeah, that was my question last time this topic was brought up in front of the board, because both roads are within what, 1.5 miles, 2 miles of each other, and both roads essentially service the same population, which is car commuters in the same general area. So in terms of large infrastructure, few and far between with dollars in this community. So investing a lot of money in a toll road that services a specific group of people, and only that specific group of folks with two toll lanes or managed lanes on both I-75 and 301. That's a lot of investment for one segment of the population of a larger community. So I hopefully your studies will look at that a little bit more. And I understand, I guess as a follow-up, you are coordinating with the department.
Oh, yes. Everything has gone through the EDTM goes through district. We are. Also, what we found too was, and the Gandy project helped a lot with this. We've been monitoring. It was funny because when we were getting ready to open that, I was standing on the top of it, and Councilman Citro was saying, you know, I want to see what this does in the future. And we've been doing counts and safety all the way through. The Gandy connector, Selma West Extension, has moved 40% of the through trips off the corridor. It's reduced the crashes along the corridor, and it's made it more pedestrian friendly. So the benefits for the corridor are not just for that one population that's using the through trips, but hopefully we would like to give the roadway back to the community underneath, and that's part of what we saw in Gandy.
On that note, though, you mentioned that the study hasn't determined whether or not this will be an above grade or at grade project. Is that right?
Some places.
So we don't actually know if it will be returned back to folks, because if it's above grade, yeah, I mean, we don't know. We don't know for sure.
Yes. We will find out through the preferred alternative and going through that, but you're definitely going to be elevated in some places.
So I'm happy to make a motion to support with a note that I think as you're moving forward with this process, because there's still a lot of questions that haven't been answered. And just given the presentation today, I would encourage Thea to not overpromise, not under-deliver on some of the walkability items. I think the Gandy project is very contextual to Gandy Boulevard being in the urban core and being within an urban environment. 301 is not that environment. It's a very wide road with a lot of high speed and a lot of different assets that currently facilitate a certain type of development. So in order for that road to have some kind of walkability transformation would require a Marshall plan for just that road. So there's a lot of investment that goes in. Now, this is just a toll road. I mean, Thea's a toll road builder. That is your first job, first and foremost. You're not a transit provider. There are other projects. I think Thea does a fantastic job of promoting walkability on its assets, especially within the urban core. But 301 is not that road. So I think there needs to be a little bit of caveat and honest conversation when we're talking about matching with comprehensive plans on trail access and talking about walkability and returning the road. And we don't necessarily have those answers yet, and we don't necessarily know where this project's going to end up on a walkability. We don't even know if it's going to be a walkability project. I mean, quite frankly, it's just a toll road extension down South County. So we should talk about what it is on its face and not talk about other things as a way to sweeten a deal when there's no sweetener in it.
Is there a second, first of all? We can continue the conversation, but is there a second?
I'd like to continue the conversation.
Well, I said it doesn't stop us from continuing the conversation. Okay, well then you may have to wait on that.
That's fine.
Kathy.
That's okay. I just want to clarify, I guess, some of the responses to the chair's questions.
Sure.
So you're a toll road provider, you provide the facility, right? Your modeling goes through, you could model it just for freight, you could model it just for cars, you could model it for whatever. So you partner with area transit providers and you actually factor that in, right? So they have express services down there, they're likely gonna roll it in. They look at this, oh my gosh, now we have a new facility to provide. They're gonna all go all the way down there. Okay, we want to model it for X number more express services, whether they're express or BRT, whatever you want to call them. So you do model for transit because you partner with those other agencies.
Yes, we do.
So in fact, you could just say you built a toll road just for human beings to walk. You could do that too if you wanted to model it that way, although it would be ridiculous. But for what you do. So I think the response is, yes, they do model it. They model it for whatever the users are essentially. And they partner with those agencies to do that. The other thing is, because this is like the first step, we're 5 years out of studies and modeling and if not more.
We're starting the PD&E with you, and we'll maybe be looking at 36 months. I mean,
Yeah.
it is 3 years to go through the PD&E and to come up with that. We would bring in the county commission back updates along the way. Major one will be what the preferred alternative is based on what the data and the analysis shows. That will be the first real big where and this is the concept of what we're looking at. And
That's what I was thinking. This is
process.
purely concept. If you look at that map and see, hey, we can connect this all the way south and say, hey, this could be elevated, it could be not elevated, but there's extending those toll lanes down to connect farther south into the county. Period. Is there even a viability for that? Should we even look at this any further? Then you move into the hardcore, it's starting to drill down, right?
And that's when we'll get into that. I mean, and the bottom line on this is that we want to make the corridor better than what we found. I mean, we live here too. So that's basically where
Or at least you want to make the opportunity to lift some of that traffic up so that other authorities can try to figure out what to do with this. Because if you take some of that freight off, if you take some of that express transit, if you take some of that through traffic off of it, there's more opportunity there to do something with that corridor.
there's more opportunity with your.
Conceptually, I'm with you. I just want to make sure that's
Yes,
out there and understood.
yes, we are on the.
I would make a motion to go ahead and send the comments as is.
Okay, great.
Can I just make one other comment?
Well, we have several other
Sure.
people too. Larry?
So, I heard transit. The only thing that I heard about transit was bus routes. So, Brightline is now looking at, and this has come up in the past. I actually worked on some projects to put a rail down the center of 5-4 from Orlando to Tampa. Brightline is looking at that again to extend that rail corridor. We're one of the top 20 metropolitan areas in the country, only one without rail transit, which we were talking about moving people. We want to move people, and that would move people fast. So does your transit corridor consider rail?
No, we have not considered rail at this point.
I think you should really consider that in the analysis, because that would be the only corridor, the north-south corridor, that I could see right now. Because I mean, they're on I-75, that's all lanes, you know, and maybe they could build an overhead rail corridor on that, but if we're going to do that, maybe we should look at a rail corridor for a north-south, because if Brightline brings in the rail corridor to downtown Tampa, then we have the east-west, and then in the future, like all rail systems, they'll start pulling off spurs from that to go east-west throughout the county, different locations.
So far, Brightline has always spoken to us about the I-4 corridor coming into downtown and spoken to them about the downtown area, but they've already chosen their station. So
Yeah, but I mean, Brightline may not be the only provider if you never provide for that and the infrastructure, because you're probably going to have been designed for that type of weight and function. So just a consideration, I think that should be in place.
thank you.
Okay, Bob?
Oh, I was gonna say, just on Kathy's comment, the comp plans, comments and where we are and the county's comments from these committees and stuff, at this point is great, because the sooner we know, the sooner we're involved with them, and the sooner we get you guys involved, the better we can make the project. I mean, nobody wants to get to preferred alternative and then find out that we're going back and redoing things because we didn't do it. We do have a plan with, working with Melissa and the planning commission. We will be going down and doing listening tours down, probably about 30 of them throughout the summer down in the corridor before the PD&E starts. And as I want to emphasize listening. We want to hear what's going on down there before we get into the PD&E, where it's more of us showing what we have and getting the comments. So I do agree that these comments right now are important, and bottom line is, can't fix it if I don't know it's broke. So if I find out what the problems are, we can do the best we can, and if we can't do something, at least we can come back and explain what we did to try to look at it and why we're not making that. We may not agree, but at least it'll be an honest effort.
I will say they've been, in my 20 years of working with them professionally, they're the most innovative and most responsive to people
100%.
and for
Yeah.
beautification and pedestrian access and everything. They're the most
Yeah.
out there for.
The
What we
difference
do.
the difference between you and FDOT is light years.
Yeah.
I mean, light years. In terms of support and help and like access to the community, we really do appreciate that. I do have a question though, if you could go back a couple of slides, the consistency.
Well, I don't think it's consistency, it's.
Yeah, it's consistency with the comprehensive plan.
Right.
And I just have to,
This is the consistency with the Riverview Community Plan. Are you?
yeah, this one, the future land use element, that. There, no, the one that had the words. That's the one. No, the one that had the descriptions after it. Keep going. Maybe the other, you,
Yeah, go
you had
forward.
stopped at it and
It
it
was
was
the
like that,
other colored one.
the other one.
Keep going. Keep going.
This is for the.
Keep going. There you
That
go.
one.
So this, and I just have to mention this because I was just really shocked to find the word attractive in every single one of these goals, because to me, there is nothing less attractive than a road. And I mean, you can try your best, but roads are ugly. And I just think it's really weird that we use the word attractive. And I think I mean, I know this doesn't have anything to do with this, but that stood out to me because there is no such thing as attractive asphalt. So, okay, just have to make that comment.
Incidentally, I was the project manager for the Riverview Community Plan, so like when they're referencing attractive and multimodal and landscaped and shaded, they were imagining like, oh, it would be really great if it were like Water Street versus a typical roadway. So
Yeah.
you can't have an attractive roadway as far as they were considered. Again, this was very interesting, but the only goal at this super early stage is to see if staff missed anything that we need this community to provide as comments. So transit is in our analysis. The rail, I just wanted to offer up that like if you elevate all the other roadway, get 40% of it off like Gandy. Oh my gosh, maybe we could have dedicated transit and rail on the below portion, you know, which would be a lot less expensive. So, Chair, really the thing is like, did we miss anything? Is there anything else White needs to
At
consider?
the end of my comments, I said that I had made a motion.
Yes,
Yeah.
but I hadn't gotten a second.
Okay.
Is anybody?
So moved.
Okay. So we have a motion, by Kathy and a second by Kevin, all in favor.
What's the motion for? I mean,
To just move this forward, to just,
Send the
that they are gonna take
Send the
all the
comments.
comments of what we said and move it to continue to figure out if this is even feasible. So, all in favor?
We would be providing comments to that DOT capturing discussion. The discussion here.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Great, thank you, White. We got 3 presentations.
can I just ask a question? This is kind of like the first project from the very absolute beginning that I've been here. I've been here 7 years, so off and on. Is this not the portion where we start talking about these things over and over? Like, I didn't hear from David. Do you really think this is needed? I mean, I don't know. I don't live down there. I don't drive down there.
But that's what he was saying is the point of this, to see if it's needed. That's where they are in the stage of talking about, is this something that's needed? So they haven't even gotten to any type of planning. They're just gonna go to listen, from my understanding. And Bob, you may wanna chime in more.
Okay, the one positive of us being a toll road is if it's not needed, you're not gonna have the traffic, there's not gonna be the revenue, which means we're gonna say we can't build it because we can't afford it. As opposed to using other types of funding. So believe me, we want it to be as needed if we're gonna build it as anyone else, because nobody wants a toll road that's gonna fail. That is just that you do not want that. So we will definitely be looking into it, and you will be getting, and I use the term investment grade, but you'll be getting honest answers on what the need is, because the need is gonna be based on what bonds can be sold against. And that's as good as we can get.
I have a question just to follow up on something that you had just said. Have you, as an agency, ever gone down this path of looking and doing an EDM and then figuring out if it's even possible and then saying, no, it's not possible?
Yes.
Like, is there an example that you can?
The east-west connector up north, when we looked at it and the tolls came out that it would have to be like $7 for.
Oh, they're like around Van Dyke or something like
This was
that?
up by New Tampa, it's connected
Oh, that thing,
to
yes.
I-75 from Bears, and the tolls were, it was unrealistically high that people would pay it and use it, and we said,
And the city ended up building, right? Is that?
No, nobody.
No, nobody
Nobody
knows.
built it.
nobody
Okay.
did. So
I was thinking
so
that-
that was one, and there are other.
It might be needed now, but that's the thing. Seriously,
Okay.
no connection up there.
Yeah, like 54 and
Yes.
that area.
No, this was.
It's in between.
Yeah.
There's no east-west connection at all.
Then the only other question I had that I didn't ask was, if this is the Thea project, Thea's paying for it, possibly with federal funding. Would there be any local match?
That remains to be seen. We're gonna have to see what that comes up with on how much based on the revenue that's generated through the need versus the cost and how we can do it. It's one of the reasons we're doing a NEPA is to try to bring as much federal funding as we can to reduce that local match as much as possible, where maybe our bonding monies is part of that, things along those lines. So we are using every avenue to try to bring in as much different money as possible, because it's just gotten so expensive to build these roads.
Yeah, I don't, I think it would be very hard. We don't have any local dollars, really. So Kevin?
Has Thea ever asked for a local match for any of the existing projects? Has there ever been a local match that you've requested from either the county or the city for a big ticket expansion?
If I remember correctly, FDOT used some toll credits that they had that we were able to use for either for the our reversible lane segment at part of that. But no, for the most part, everything we've done has been able to be bonded or paid.
Yeah, yeah.
Through our own stuff.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, you're very self-sufficient.
Yeah.
Right.
that's
Which
all.
is good, yeah, because there's no other money here, so.
No, I mean, that's why I had to ask, because I was pretty sure.
I just
that
don't
was
want to
it.
say that it's gonna be done until we know.
No, no, that's fair, but I have a feeling that you probably wouldn't want to do something you'd have to ask money for, because then it wouldn't be paying for itself. But Lisa,
Just remind the group,
I know.
we had a project that got dubbed the Green Swap of Death, and it was applying for the South County extension. It may or may not have been a THEA project, but it was just a concept on the line, tested, horribly hated, so it came off the map. And then I'll remind everybody, when you saw the Access 2050 survey results, this project was in there because we were like, what does the community think? If it had horribly gone down in flames, it might not even be before us today. So like, we're like, this step is only to say, what should THEA or whoever builds this facility consider in the next steps? And we went through and scoured everything and all the topics. And so now it's queued up. It might also with your toll thing, like I-75, of course, because there isn't a toll road out in the area, it is proposed as if that's a funding mechanism is to have express lanes on it. It may not, DOT may not have to toll those and leave them free if this project's there, because yes, two dueling toll roads, so that would be a win-win as well. So there's a lot of redesigning of 301 that is in policy that might actually be possible if this were to be built. Again, it's just the baby steps, and you guys love to get into the weeds. We don't, elections.
Yes, but yes, so if there's not anything else, and I know we'll get some updates on this, we can move on to Access 2050.
I just want to make sure that this is continually talked about.
Yes.
I mean, I don't even know the purpose of the road. Is this road being proposed to dump more people onto the Selman to get them downtown? Or is it to get them around the city? Is it a bypass situation? You know,
To
why don't
connect
we,
to the Selman that already exists.
why don't we build a bridge across the stupid bay, and then all the commuters from the base, which is why we're looking at the ferry, can just drive to work every day
Yeah,
across
the
the bridge.
ferry's gone.
Pardon?
The ferry's gone.
Completely.
Yes. Yeah, the current makeup of the
It's on
county
pause.
commission is,
It's on pause because there's no funding.
well, it's gonna stay on pause unless the commission makeup changes.
2 years.
It's important to you before.
Not 2 years, you got 6 months, not even. Okay, go ahead.
Long range plan.
All right, good morning, Elizabeth Watkins, TPO staff. I'm here with our consultant, Lauren Brooks. Lauren, if you could pull the PowerPoint slides up, that would be fabulous.
You're on mute.
Yeah, so I'll take the first
Sorry.
part of the presentation and then Lauren will continue. So the item before you today for information is the cost feasible plan financial scenarios. So the cost feasible plan is an integral component of our long range transportation plan. The long range plan, as you all know, is the high level vision for transportation in Hillsborough County over the next 20 years. It's updated every 5 years because things change. And the last long range plan, we thought we would have a surtax to go just to transportation. Unfortunately, that's not on the table. So we have to get back update the plan based on best available information. And the long range plan also helps guide federal dollars for transportation improvements. About $1 billion for transportation is spent in Hillsborough County per year. And this plan kind of sets out the goals, objectives, and policies on how we would like as a community for those dollars to go. Next slide, please, Lauren. So the cost feasible plan. It's exactly what it sounds like, because which projects are actually feasible or affordable in this long range 20-year plan. So the way that we get to this is we take all of those needs assessments that have come before you, whether it were for safety or real choice with not driving, so bus service, trails, major projects, and we have 2 different levels of performance. What we keep doing today, and then if there was an enhanced level of funding, what could be accomplished. So we take those needs assessments and take those revenue forecasts and kind of blend them together to present various scenarios that we that ultimately one of them will be the cost feasible plan. And the last thing I want to emphasize on this is the long range plan can't be a wish list. So we take all the funding that we expect to be available over the next 20 years, and we have to really whittle that down to what could be reasonably expected to be available. And we all know construction costs have escalated. Our transportation dollars aren't going as far as they used to. So last bit of background before I hand it over to Lauren is a reminder of our TPO funding programs. So we have 5 different programs, kind of just for ease of conversation and grouping these investments. Good repair and resilience, like your resurfacing, your bridge replacements, your stormwater infrastructure related to the roadway. Vision Zero, complete streets treatment, sidewalks. Smart city is more of your technology. How can we optimize the signals? What intersection improvements can be captured under there? Real choices when not driving is that local bus service, TD service, which is paratransit, and trails and greenways. And lastly is those major projects, those road widenings, the interchanges, and fixed guideway transit. So rail, bus rapid transit, those high dollar projects. Those are the ones that are going to be individually listed in the long range plan. So now I'll hand it over to Lauren to go through the revenue numbers and present to you the initial financial scenarios.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Good morning, everyone. So these are the types of revenues that were considered as part of the revenue forecast, as Elizabeth mentioned in the previous slide. The existing funding sources, what we have today, are shown as the gray bars on the left side of the screen. The potential sources, those that would require a vote, a referendum, state legislative action that were explored as part of the revenue forecast, are shown as blue and orange bars on the right side of the screen. The cost feasible financial scenarios were crafted using the existing funding sources and those potential sources shown as blue bars. And the reason for that is because these 4 sources seemed more feasible to move forward. And these sources included the renewals of the community investment tax, the 9th cent fuel tax, the first local option fuel tax, because they all expire within our revenue forecast period. And then the enactment of the 5-cent second local option fuel tax. And again, at the end of this presentation, we'll kind of get into direction that we received from the TPO board because we presented earlier this month to them. So not all projects can be funded by available revenues. Each revenue source has its own rules and regulations. So these are the types of projects that can be funded by those existing sources. So again, those sources shown as gray bars on that previous slide, and that's based on policy that's in place today. These are the types of projects that can be funded by those 4 potential sources, again, based on policy that's in place today. However, of course, this could change based on any new or updated direction from our decision makers. This is a snapshot of how we are allocating our funding today, countywide, across the different transportation project categories. FDOT has the largest pot of funding, while the major projects category serves as the biggest piece of the pie, if you will. Local funding is largely concentrated on those projects that fall under the umbrella of good repair and resilience. And Elizabeth mentioned these before, such as road resurfacings, bridge maintenance, stormwater and drainage improvements. For the financial scenario exercise, we allocated those existing funding sources. So again, those sources that were shown as gray bars in the previous slide, we allocated them based on this trend spending pattern, if you will. And that stayed constant for each financial scenario. So just make a mental note of this pie chart because we'll keep referring back to it later in the presentation. So these are the different elements that compose the financial scenario exercise. Again, Elizabeth showed you that chart earlier. So the needs assessments that were prepared served as this first element. And she mentioned this too. Each needs assessment established those existing or trend needs. So what is needed to sustain our transportation system as it is today? And then, of course, what is needed to achieve our future vision or our transportation vision in the future. So again, adding new bus service or increasing the frequency by which we resurface roads, those types of measurable goals. The expenditures, again, think of that pie chart. So it's what we're investing in to address our needs. And then the revenues, of course, are our funds. So how we are supporting our investments. Again, just to reiterate, those existing funding sources were allocated based on that pie chart. So the trend spending pattern, and those remain constant for each scenario. The potential local sources, however, those were the ones that were manipulated for each financial scenario, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So the needs assessments, of course, were based on measurable performance outcomes. So these performance metrics that were established for each project category. The financial scenarios really tested the allocations of the different funding levels to see how well we could achieve these performance metrics and hence our performance level needs. These are the 9 financial scenarios that were explored. We have 2 low funding scenarios, so meaning we only accounted for existing funding sources. We did not account for those potential funding sources. And then, of course, the high funding scenarios did account for those potential funding sources. And this is where we really maximize those sources to try to achieve our performance level needs based on the particular project category that we were focused on for that scenario. We are only going to focus on the outcomes of those that are highlighted given our time constraints. So for this first low funding scenario, we wanted to see how well our existing funding sources were addressing our existing needs, again, based on our trend spending pattern. The outcome is what you would expect. We're essentially balancing our needs with our revenues. So what we're putting in is what we're getting out. This is the second of the low funding scenarios. Again, we're only looking at our existing funding sources, but we wanted to see how well, based on our trend spending pattern, our allocations, how well we would meet our performance level needs across the different project categories. So if you refer to this table, we did a pain scale, so to speak. So you can see we have a lot of sad or frown faces that are shown, meaning we are not doing such a great job with our existing funding sources in terms of addressing our performance level needs across the different project categories. So this is the first of the high funding scenarios where we did start accounting for those potential funding sources. Again, we allocated all of the sources based on that trend spending pattern. So again, based on that pie chart. And really the point of this scenario was to determine how well, based on that allocation pattern, we would meet our potential level needs. So in comparison to that previous slide, you can see a lot of the frown faces have now been converted to more neutral faces. So we have more yellow neutral faces across the board for the different project categories, meaning with those additional funding sources, we're able to do a better job at addressing our performance level needs across the different project categories. For scenario 7, this is where we maximize those potential funding sources to see how well we could fund our local highway projects. So again, we did not account for the strategic intermodal system or SIS highway projects. Those essentially take care of themselves as part of the Florida Department of Transportation's SIS cost feasible plan. So again, this scenario only focused on those non-SIS or local highway projects. Once we allocated our funding, maximizing the funding to meet those needs, we then allocated the rest of the funding to fixed guideway transit projects because they were the other subcategory under the major projects category, and then everything else based on eligibility was then allocated according to that trend spending pattern. So the results on the side, you can see that again, in comparison to scenario 2, when we had a lot of neutral faces, those have now been converted to frown or sad faces across these different project categories. However, for the non-SIS highway category, the frown face has now been converted to a neutral face, which makes sense because we have generated an additional $3.6 billion by including those potential local sources and concentrating them on this particular project category. So please don't get hung up on this. This is just for illustrative purposes only, where these are kind of representative projects, if you will, of what could be funded under this particular scenario. Again, in either fully or partially, and that's not to say they couldn't be funded in some capacity under the other scenarios. It just, of course, there's a higher probability of them being funded in one way or another if we concentrate our revenues on this particular category. Scenario 8 is exactly the same as scenario 7. We're just flip-flopping or switching the local highway projects with the fixed guideway transit projects. And the results on the side you can see are exactly the same, and there's a few reasons for this. First, the performance level needs for fixed guideway transit projects are quite high. So even with the additional funding sources, we're not able to meet those performance level needs. With the inclusion of those potential local sources, only 1.3 billion can be used for fixed guideway transit projects. And again, that's based on policy as it is today. The community investment tax is not used currently on fixed guideway transit projects, nor is HART a recipient of the CIT. So just keep that in mind why the results are the same. Again, this is just a few representative projects of what could move forward under this particular scenario, either partially funded or fully funded. Here is a snapshot of the outcomes of each of the scenarios. You can see that scenario 2 actually performs the best as we have more, I guess, green and neutral faces compared to some of the other scenarios. So, of course, we're here today to seek your feedback. Of course, we're going to share what we learned from the board with you all at the end of this presentation, but we'd love to hear your thoughts. Based on the input we collect, we'll refine the scenarios. Again, Elizabeth mentioned this, the goal is to come up with maybe 1 or 2 refined scenarios so we can then move forward in preparing the cost feasible plan. And we'll come back in August with the results of that effort. And again, this all, of course, is in line with the adoption of the plan in October, the overall long-range transportation plan in October. So with that, I will turn it back over to Elizabeth, who will lead the discussion on seeking your feedback.
Thanks, Lauren. And this is the most important part of the presentation. We really want to hear from you all on your thoughts on the revenues and the different performance levels. Although I do want to share the board direction that we received at the June 12th meeting.
Yes. Let's wait and hear what people have to say first so that that doesn't taint what people have to say. And at the end, you can say what they said. I think that would be more interesting.
Okay, that would be great. So you can read them here, but the first question we wanted to pose to the group is should potential local revenues be included? So that's the extension of the CIT and the reauthorization of those tool fuel taxes, in addition to a full new authorization of that second local option fuel tax.
Okay, I saw Kathy's hand first.
Just a couple things. Generally speaking, I like the options that do as much as we can across the board.
So number 2.
I would say number 2, get as much as you can. I say that because the next question, we're doing nothing but playing catch up, obviously, for decades, right? So in the analysis of what you're catching up to, by the time we get to catching up on what we're doing here, it'll really be red again, right? Do you factor in? You do factor in the growth and the needs potential today, how far behind we are, but also are you factoring in like, it could be 15 years before some of this stuff is built. Are we cluing into what those are now? So the reality is when we look at this again in 10 years, 15 years, they'll all be red again.
That's a good point. I don't know if Lauren, you want to best address that. I'll just share some initial thoughts. Really, those needs assessments had two pathways. One, if we just keep doing what we're doing, and then one, if we had enhanced funding, what else would we accomplish? We didn't kind of account for that delta, but I think that could be an improvement for the next time around. I don't know, Lauren, if you have other thoughts on that.
Sure. The needs assessments, the way they came up with their performance level needs, they did account for the 20-year time frame. So they basically came up with an annual amount and then multiplied that by 20 years. So again, it's a very rough estimate. Again, we're in the planning world. It's all ballpark figures, high level planning analysis, but they did try to account for future needs. Some of them did base it on growth. It depended what project category was being addressed. For the major projects part, what we did was try to allocate the funding for those individual projects based on the time horizon. So whatever funding was available for that 10-year or 5-year time frame, all the way through 2050, we allocated that accordingly. So why I was saying some of these projects could be partially funded, like maybe we could only afford the design phase for one particular project, but for this other project, we could fund it fully given the revenue available. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, it's always catch up basically, because we are so far behind because we haven't made the decisions locally to increase mobility fees or charge what it actually costs to repair roads. But that aside, what is the new fuel tax rate? The new one?
The new one that is not currently levied here, but is levied in other neighboring counties is 5 cents per.
I know when I go to Sarasota, it's more.
Yeah.
To visit my dad. That's why he comes up here to get gas. Sometimes. Yes, Rebecca.
If we consider the CIT things that haven't been approved yet, what happens if they're not approved?
That was scenario one. That was essentially like that doomsday scenario. We saw lots of not happy faces because our transportation funding is limited here. So if that's not extended, that will have an impact.
Everything will be red.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Lauren. So that's a scenario one.
Yeah. Kevin?
Given the changes to the CIT that's currently up in front of voters, have those changes been reflected in your scenarios?
So what we're assuming for the CIT is about half of that goes to transportation. Just given the timeline of this exercise versus like when it's going to go to ballot, when those interlocal agreements for the CIT, we felt based on consultation with our local government partners that was a good assumption to use. So basically what's happening today, about 50% of the CIT goes to transportation. That's what's assumed here.
And that includes the 20-year horizon.
That assumes that it gets updated, that it gets passed in 2026 and then it gets reauthorized again because we have a long planning horizon. We can change that assumption next time we do the long range.
Okay, because I saw earlier back it had 2031 as a date. So is that, oh, go ahead, sorry.
That's for the 9th set. So
Okay.
lots of our revenue sources will be expiring before 2015.
Okay, so then this counts on not just one renewal, but 2 renewals. Of the
Three.
CIT
Three.
currently.
Great.
3. Oh, sorry. So 3 renewals of the currently proposed CIT. I love a good graph because that's what the government.
Yeah. In 5 years, when we update this again, we can kind of see where we are. I mean, things change.
Yeah, all right.
It does not make all green happy faces.
Yeah. Thank you.
No, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to add to the answer to help answer Kevin's question. We did adjust the funding level, Kevin, to account for like if it's not going to start until 2026, you know what I mean? Or if the 9th cent expires in 2031, we accounted for some of those adjustments. So just wanted to make everyone aware of that.
So my question is, you said you used the word trend spending, and I'm disappointed by that, because really, when you go back to the original pie chart that you said in your head, or that you said we should keep in our head, quite frankly, there's too much on building roads. There's too much on maintaining roads. So for me personally, what I would like to see is a plan, and this is the cost feasible financial scenario, to cut that major projects to 50%, to cut the good repair and resilience to 25%, and then share the Vision Zero smart cities and real choices while not driving to 25%. That would be my personal, it's not much, but just doing something to try to move the money where the community has said they actually want it. So that's my.
Yeah, this is based on, this is a snapshot of what's in the capital improvement programs today. So so it's for a 5-year period. So I think it was 2022 to 2027. So again, that was just for existing funding sources that remained constant for each of the financial scenarios, because we assumed that, again, the countywide, we would continue to kind of allocate our funding as we're doing today. And again, that was just for the existing revenue sources. But those potential revenue sources, that's what we kind of manipulated and changed. So to your point, that's what we tried to do for scenario, like I think scenario 3 accounted for Vision Zero, or maybe it was scenario 4, where we maximized all the potential funding sources and put that towards Vision Zero, and so forth. So again, we were trying to yes, address those different needs based on what we've heard. So again, scenario 2, though, does kind of follow this pattern, and we are going to make adjustments. We recognize that this is quite high because of the FDOT projects. So we're going to kind of relook at this allocation again and just focus on those local highway projects and see if there's an opportunity to kind of, readjust these percentages based on that.
And I think that's the whole point, though, is that we shouldn't be focusing on current trend spending. That's my point. And the point being that we're never going to get away from being the highest traffic fatality county if we don't start changing. Anyway, I think I saw Connor first.
Yeah, and Elizabeth and Lauren may be able to correct me, but it's important to know that this is the primary work mix as well. So if capacity project also has safety aspects to it, it's still going to be categorized as major projects. So that would be the primary work mix.
Thank you. Christian. And then.
So I don't know disclaimers. I don't know the process of your study, but when you guys forecast out in the future, do you look at scenarios where you increase urban density and how that plays out versus you think about sprawl and how the infrastructure costs for that, the way that we've done so in the past? Like, do you play those out?
Straight answer, no, not in this exercise, because it's 20 years and a lot of the TPO doesn't have a lot of discretion where majority of funding is being spent. We can put out these recommendations and where we want to put the TPO sub-allocated funds, but the vast majority is local and state decision makers. But your point of like sprawl and those types of land use changes, that would be captured in like an impact fee study or something like that. More of a refined level of revenue source based on those revenue changes. This is very like high level So from the federal and state forecast, we took from the economists from Tallahassee, and then we work closely with our local partners on those local discretionary funds like impact fees. And there's a couple over there just kind of escaping me right now, and using their assumptions, because at the end of the day, that's what they're building into their revenue models. So it's a great point if not included in here.
And Kathy, and I think that's going to be our last question because we have 2 more presentations.
When I used to run scenarios for things like this and planning exercises, I would always put in like worst case, best case, meaning depends on which perspective you're looking at. So it'd be the best case if everything were funded and everything could turn green. Have you actually run that and showed what it would take to actually get there with even a ballpark dollar amount associated with it? Only because I think the public needs to see that. Where they see these reds and yellows and greens, and we're gonna parse out whether it's this much of a pie for Vision Zero and this much for. Let's say we get everything we want, and we actually build all those roads, we maintain everything, we put Vision Zero everywhere, we do complete streets everywhere. What's the actual dollar amount? How much are we gonna have to raise to do it? People will have absolute sticker shock because they'll be like, okay, you're paying $8 a gallon, you know, you're paying X dollars in sales tax, but everything else. I think you have to put that out there because that's the reality of being grown-ups and you live in Hillsborough County. This is what it costs to live here. If you truly want, otherwise you're gonna have to sacrifice something. You're gonna have to give. I don't know. I would put it out there.
I appreciate that comment because we have all those numbers. Yeah.
I would throw it out there.
Educational.
Yeah, I would throw it out
see
at
that.
number 9. This is number 9, optimal.
Yeah. I would absolutely love to see that and the scenarios that go along with how we could pay for it.
Yeah.
That would be really eye-opening. Thank you.
We're at 13 billion in backlog.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We're always behind. We've been behind for 50.
But you're right, people don't have an idea. But we could talk about this all day and I greatly appreciate it, but we only have a half an hour and we have 2 more presentations. So I want to be mindful of everyone's time. So thank you so much. This was a lovely discussion.
And the
Thank you,
next
everyone.
one is one you guys have been requesting for many years, moons.
So the Environmental Restoration Fund.
The 4th one is not time sensitive. I feel like I could say that we could move it to a future month if need be.
I don't, it may not, it may be pretty quick too, though.
Yeah, I can make it quick.
Just. Oh. It's a peak.
Yeah, that's really I could see all the. See,
All the.
no, I do have done.
Python and something completely different. I'm Alan Howell, I'm the registered landscape architect for Public Works and certified arborist. And
It's part of our people. I said 100%.
In the meantime, I think we might have it.
Is it showing on this? Connor?
It's right here, just, it hasn't loaded up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like delay because of the
Yeah.
county internet, but it's working.
Oh, there we are.
Okay, let's make it a big screen. Okay, we did.
so again, this is, going to talk about the Environmental Restoration Fund initiatives, and what the fund is intended to do is to replace trees that get cut down because of developments. When a developer comes in on site and removes more tree inches then they can replace on the site. They have to pay into this environmental restoration fund. So we get to utilize that fund to help with increasing the tree canopy in our in Hillsborough County rights of way. And it's used for buying, planting, maintaining the trees within Hillsborough County right of way. We want to develop these programs to replace the tree canopy because trees are always getting cut down, not only from the developers, but also because of in subdivisions where trees become problems with sidewalks and curb and gutter. But also we want to enhance the visual experience of people utilizing the road. And here's the process we went through. We want to identify locations to add native and non-native, but non-native where they're Florida friendly, to existing stormwater facilities, and to primarily scenic roadways. Our last project we did covered as much of the scenic roadways as we could. There were a lot of scenic roadways that weren't candidates because of various factors, including road size, overhead infrastructure, etc. We established plant palettes, and we have both in-house and through consultants done designs for landscape plans. They've been installed and we're in the process of maintaining. For the site selection criteria in ponds, we wanted to make sure that any ponds that we did were visible from the roadway so that it was enhancing the aesthetics of the roadways themselves. That was our pilot program. Made sure that there were enough room for the plantings that didn't interfere with the functional aspects of the stormwater ponds, and that there was sufficient distance from the infrastructure to not interfere with that infrastructure. Of course, tree roots tend to interfere with things when they're not planted right. For roadway medians, it was pretty much the same thing. We did prioritize scenic corridors. We wanted to make sure we had good sight distance and clear zone recovery as required for safety. Median width, we decided that 18-foot median width was the minimum that we would utilize, because anything less than that does not do well for the trees and could impact the infrastructure like the curb and gutter, etc. We wanted to make sure we were clear from overhead obstructions. You've seen before where they plant a tree right under a power line that crosses the road or right next to a street light. We're trying to avoid that. And again, just distance from subsurface infrastructure so that the tree roots don't interfere. So the first stormwater pond project was done about 4 years ago in these 4 locations. But the original one was a commissioner request at the Lithia Pinecrest Road, Valrico Road pond. It's actually below the pond. It's in an area that the commissioner desired to have native planting. So we did a planting project there utilizing the fund. It was successful, which led to the stormwater pond pilot project. And this is one of the ponds. It's at Valrico Road, south of State Road 60. If you know the public's there at Valrico and State Road 60 is behind that. This was the design. This was consultant design. They did a good job. This is what it looked like before planting. So it was fairly plain. There were some trees along the edge. And this is what it would look like right after the planting. So there were a lot of native trees, palms, pines, wax myrtles, some undergrowth plants. And now this is what it looked like 2 or 3 years after the project. So it's definitely an enhancement of pond system. The most current, or the last project was roadway medians. We did about 8 medians, and this is Bruceby Downs planting plan. We did major trees, and we did at the request of Hunter's Green area. We did some ground cover plantings at the noses of a couple of entrances. This is what that ground cover planting looks like at the entrances. These are some of the plantings. These are Japanese blueberries, which are a good non-native but Florida-friendly plant. And so looking at it right now, there was the stars where the pilot project was. These are the roads that have been done. Van Dyke, Racetrack Road, Citrus Park, Pinecrest, Causeway Boulevard, Waimama Recycling, 19th Avenue, as well as the ponds. But we're in the process right now, the 2024-2025 fiscal year roadways, and these are some of the candidates: Air Lake Road, Columbus Drive, Benona Assassin Road, South Park, Falkenberg, Progress Road, and Progress Boulevard, and 24th Street North. I'm in the process of getting those designs in place and be trying to get those contracted before the end of fiscal year 24. And that's it, unless you have any questions.
Larry.
Yeah.
Hey, Larry.
How you doing? At the interchange of I-75 and Fowler, have you ever seen that recently?
Not recently.
So they've done a lot of plantings, and in combined with that, they've created designs, and they've used a lot of different colored rocks or stones, wouldn't say rocks per se, mixed in with that. So if, you know, it really looks, you know, I drive by it every day going home. So it really is, to me, is, you know, noticeable, and it looks really nice. So
Very dynamic.
so I was wondering if, when you do this, can you institute some of that into these type of plannings?
Unless we can find another funding source, you won't be able to do that because the Environmental Restoration Fund is for plant material only. So it would not include non-vegetative materials.
Well, there may be, you know, if we talk to Leland, we may be able to find another funding source or something if you wanted to do that. If you wanted to go there.
I would like to do that. It's probably not going to be this cycle. It could be the next cycle, because we're already into this cycle and trying to get things done. It would probably take too long to get that funding in the designs done.
Understood. And then the second thing, I also go down Bruceby Downs every day, and how those trees keep on popping up there recently, and I was wondering if you have any recall on the contractors, because in certain areas the trees are dead, like 3 trees in a row.
There are, the last year's drought, there were some pretty heavy hits on the plantings that were done. The contractors have a 1-year warranty, and it's been almost 2 years now, so we have no recourse to get to the contractor back. I am looking at utilizing some of this funding to replace some of those trees, especially with different species that might be more viable in this location.
Great, thanks.
Yes, David.
First thing, I think what you've done, like on Causeway, has made a huge difference to that roadway. It looks like a completely different roadway, and you're really having an impact, I think, on how visually our community looks. So I congratulate you and your team. And I would love to hear your opinion. I think where we've struggled is, our committee deals with a lot of pedestrians. And we're constantly struggling to find opportunities to provide shade for people on sidewalks. And I know it's much easier to put the trees in the median. Has your team identified any potential corridors where, the installation of trees either adjacent to the sidewalk or something is feasible in the future? And does your team look at, opportunities for tree wells? Like if the sidewalk is, if the tree root over extends the sidewalk, is there ability, like out in front of this building, we have a bunch of trees and tree wells, of moving that into other areas of the community? Do you guys, is that in your purview, or?
It could be in my purview. We always have issues with planting trees between the sidewalk and the curb. Unless there's 20 feet. If you go down just about any subdivision road, what we call the parkway, which is the area between the sidewalk and the curb, is anywhere from 6 to 8 feet.
Right.
A lot of trees. I'm also the arborist for Public Works, and it's incumbent upon me and my tree removal contract to require trees being cut whenever a sidewalk is replaced. Because if they don't cut the tree, it's going to do one of two things. It's going to either fall over in a heavy wind into the roadway, or it's going to decline and die over 3 to 5 years because they're cutting structural roots when they replace the sidewalk and or the curb and gutter. So unless there's enough room, we can't really utilize that because it's just going to be a maintenance nightmare in the next 15 to 20 years. As far as tree wells are concerned, again, the Environmental Restoration Fund doesn't allow for infrastructure development, only for planting of plant material. So if there were other funding sources, that would be something that could be looked at, but it's not part of this program specifically.
Well, and I know it's probably not within your purview, but I do think we have to, as a community, get to a point where trees and sidewalks can coexist. It happens in multiple other major cities. They're able to figure it out. They use alternative sidewalk materials, things like that. I look at like 301. There's a beautiful trail that runs along this. Nobody uses it during the day. There's nobody on it because there's no shade. And we really, if we're really focused on pedestrians, we've got to figure this out and use other materials that allow trees to, be closer to the actual people that need them. But I do want to end on the roads look great that you've been able to work your magic on. So I do appreciate it.
Kathy, and then Danielle, and then Larry.
Simple question. By rule, are you limited to only planting on rights of way, or can you plant on other public lands? Such as library sites, parks, school, like not schools, but you know what I mean, like other county lands.
There are other departments that have access to environmental restoration.
Okay.
Funds. I, as a public works employee,
Just
only
roads.
get roadways and bonds.
So you're not in charge of the other ones then? Okay.
Danielle.
So City of Tampa Parks and Recreation, landscape architect, certified arborist. The city does have a similar program.
I wrote it.
And we are looking at, I know Whit Reamer in particular and Kayla Casale are working with Resilient Cities to look at places where we can plant trees and with sidewalks. I've done this for a long time and it is really hard to get trees and sidewalks. Not to say I haven't done it, but we have similar restrictions. We can't we can't pay for silver cells, we can't pay for structural soil and that kind of thing. We can really just pay for the tree, the mulch. And we're debating about whether or not we can pay for irrigation. That tends to be a big sticking point for us, is how are we gonna water these trees? We don't have the staff to water trees. We have to contract that out, and it's very expensive to do. So that's something that we as a city are working together internally to try to figure out how to do this. We also are working on some stormwater projects, some stormwater pond projects, similar to what y'all done. There's a couple of those coming up here soon, so we're starting to work together better interdepartmentally, I think, than we have in the past, to be able to take advantage of some of those stormwater ponds and things that we have that space for, so.
Well, and also we're actually, I have in my email the changes to possible, the tree fund. We're looking at changing some, loosening the restrictions, not wildly, but loosening them so that they are more, so we can, buy a water truck or do other types of assistance around. So we're trying to loosen that because times have changed. Larry.
Just a response to David. We just wrote a new manual for Hillsborough County Transportation Design. Everything was in another manual called the Transportation Technical Manual, but the whole title is for subdivisions and and so that really didn't apply to roads. So we pulled all the typical sections that were major road, arterial, and collector typical sections out of that manual, stuck them in this new manual. And what I wanted to say is, when we created the new manual for suburban typicals, most of those typicals, we took the bicycle paths off the roadway and put in 10-foot shared use paths on both sides of the road. But in addition to that, to respond to the shading question, we added, so there's a clear zone basically on either side of the typicals, the shared use path, which is 4 feet on either side. But what we did is we gave a distance of 8 feet between the back of the curb and the shared use path. That's the 4-foot clear zone and another 4 feet of green area. And then on the backside, we also did the same thing. So trees could be planted from the edge of the shared use path to the proposed new right of way. There's a 10-foot area there that I think would be sufficient to plant trees that would give shade to the shared use paths, and that was the intent there. And also the intent was, instead of just making the path just straight, that within that 10-foot area, you could do some meandering and maybe create some areas, not only with trees, but nice looking shrubs that, maybe flower and so forth.
Are the trees required as part of the cross section as well?
No, that would be, that would be, we would have to designate that and probably get that funded and put into when, so those are new cross sections. A lot of our roads, we can't fit that in, but on, Mike Williams sits on the committee that helped develop that manual. And so they're instituting that with new developments. So they could require that.
Right, which is private. So are trees required for so many per linear feet or mile in that green space that you're now provided?
Not that I know of, but.
Great. Lots of grass.
That would be a nice addition.
But a lot of communities plant trees out front, so maybe we can look at that in the next revision of the manual to actually identify that.
Just Gus first and then David.
Okay, I currently commute out Bruce B. Downs on a bus. Very few bus structures. We're now moving into the summer. We're standing over asphalt in the month of July. It's not only uncomfortable, but unpreferred. is there any way to coordinate with HART, the bus stops using trees where they whether they can't afford to build a bus structure, which is a very strong possibility. But there are many places, both urban and suburban in the county, where the placement of a single tree near a bus stop would make it a completely different bus riding experience. So I don't know if that is talked about, if Hart looks at that. I brought this up the very first year I was here, and the Hart representative said that building trees near sidewalks is a fiasco. We're putting in trees near sidewalks is fiasco. But we have seemed to be moving in the creation of more shade. So it seems like we have kind of shifted the priority. But if you guys can look at bus stops and the planting of a tree there in the months of June, July, and August, that becomes a livable situation as opposed to an unusable situation. So.
Thank you. And David said he's set. So thank you so much for the presentation. I appreciate it. Oh, I'm sorry, Lisa. I apologize.
I would just wanted to get clear on the environmental restoration fund, because we get this question a lot, and I'd like to be able to know the answer. The 50,000 that is allocated per linear mile for landscaping, is that also going this, or is it just the developer fund? Okay, so that was what prompted this original question, is like, when we collect that, where does that go? So who at your agency would go?
Probably, somebody. Probably somebody works, but it would be in the construction section. Or the design section.
It might be Leland.
Okay, maybe leaving. Okay,
But I mean, if it isn't him, he would be the one that would know.
okay. And then I would like to share, we have great resources. I just learned about your great resources. A project that is a TPO project that came through was the health impacts of complete streets. It talked about the lack of shade at bus stops, the lack of shades on the streets, that the, especially in our communities of concern or equity communities, they're on foot or bicycle. So they would, their health is significantly impacted by the lack of shade at these things. And I saw your map, and it didn't look like the roadways being given attention were prioritized for communities of concern. So we'd be glad to share that information if that's something you're interested in, maybe ranking and prioritizing the next project, so that it'd be helping impact health.
Give me a list of which they're appropriate.
Yeah, yeah, you got the whole county.
Great. Casey, do you want to try for like 2
I'm
minutes? or-
standing in between you guys and 4 minutes. I
well-
do my best, but I think I can give you an updated presentation and move to the next one.
It's kind of interesting. That's why I asked.
Yeah,
for it.
no,
And
no problem.
He is a member, so he's not gonna be here.
You've got me, yeah.
Okay, well then I'm gonna take these last couple of minutes to just talk about the elephant in the room and what happened at the TPO meeting and the tip. And that the TPO voted 8-7 to expand the interstate north of the downtown interchange. If you have not heard about this. Maybe some of you have, some of you haven't. So I see some faces that haven't heard about it. It was a surprise. No one knew it was gonna happen, or at least I didn't know it was gonna happen. And just if you want to know more about it, the Old Seminole Heights Neighborhood Association is taking up the fight, because that's cutting through our neighborhood. It's going to take out homes along that area, including the oldest house, which is also known as the Jackson House, that is right next to the interstate. So there are a couple of places that you can find out more about it. And one will be at the general membership meeting for Oceana, which is on July 23rd, which is a Tuesday night at 6:30 at the new Gwynn Center at 6900 North Nebraska Avenue. Again, that's July 23rd at 6:30 p.m. at 6900 North Nebraska Avenue. That will be what the neighborhood calls an eating meeting. So it's potluck. So if you want to come, you're more than welcome. But that's where we're going to talk about the the organizing. There's also, if that doesn't work for you, there is a happy hour tomorrow night at Southern Brewing from 6 to 8. And people will be talking about it there, I guarantee. But that's something that we're gonna have to talk about. And I don't know if anybody has anything to say about it, but I know it will be discussed at the next TPO meeting. I know the activists will be out at that meeting, and this meeting will be after that meeting. So I wanted you all to just know about it.
How far north is the wide thing?
All the way to Pierce.
So an additional lane on both sides?
Yes, additional lane on both
Right
sides.
away or no?
Yeah, they're gonna need more right away.
No, we've been told no.
DOT cannot believe that at all, because there are some houses that are so close that there's no way.
Well, thinking it slide, the new ones to back up right to it.
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
not, those new houses, I don't know what they're gonna do with them.
So they're supposed to stay in the envelope, but I guess we'll find out.
With the exception of one of the interchanges, and we are looking to find out which parcels at that interchange that has to, but they've done road resurfacing in the past and provided, the median narrowing and the shoulder enhancing to allow for the additional lane. So it's not widening in a true widening. It's just adding a lane in existing pavement for the majority of it.
They don't have the rim. They don't have the rim. They're gonna have to, I mean,
At a minimum, even if it's in the envelope, there'll be less green space along the edges.
Yeah.
Correct, because, or,
There's no green space in the,
oh, yeah.
in between the.
no, not in between, on the edges. There's some green space, like up on
There are,
that slide. There's some, green, it's just grass. It's not, beautiful or anything, but it's further away. So I'm assuming, yes, they own that green, but if they're moving the actual lanes closer to the houses, they may not be expanding the envelope like their property, but it is, I would think it would be fair to say it's potentially moving closer to the homes.
Kevin,
Would it be possible to get an update on this project at our next meeting or?
That's
just kind of a.
staff started digging in. That's why I'm telling you what I was quoted. And then I suspected, but maybe Suzanne can help us, is that this is part of the Tampa Bay Next SEIS, wasn't it not? And so the details,
yeah,
may be on the website.
I think that's a great.
Yeah,
Do
just,
you
I guess,
want to make a motion?
yeah, I'll make a motion if you can, if there's.
August will be
Staff
our
is
next-
better,
yeah.
August, just to have an update, I guess, on this project.
Do we have a second?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a motion by Kevin and I saw Gus's hand first, a second by Gus, all in favor?
And your name liaison took note of it, so.
Yep, excellent. I saw your pen going, so thank you.
So,
Is there any
and then
discussion?
DOT's liaison is also noting that that's a request of this committee.
Yes, I'll look and see. I know that we're working with Johnny. We had a meeting yesterday with Johnny and a lot of the TPO staff to get some information together for the August meeting. So I'll see what I can do when I get back to the office this afternoon to get that on the August schedule.
Okay, so it's going in August to the TPO board. Anything that gets developed for that, I will, Bonner will share with you as soon as it's available as well. Yes, we meet later in the month than the board does. But yeah, I suspect a lot of the facts are for that Tampa Bay Next.
Motion to adjourn.
Well, I think Gus had a quick
I
question.
think, on the 275 extension north of downtown, I constantly hear about widening. Is there any discussion of going more vertical? We just talked about, what, a 20-mile roadway in South County that's elevated? Are we ever talking about elevating any part of 275 north? So thus we don't have this problem where the envelope keeps getting, I don't know, expanded. Can we go up instead of going wider constantly? Because I was here for the last part of the the whole 275 revision project.
I think that'll be a good question for them in August.
Okay.
Kevin has a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? Second. Okay, motion by Kevin, second by Kathy, all in favor? Aye.
Okay, it's official. At least this last Livable Roadways is.
Thank you so much. We appreciate everything you've done. Or a staff meeting.
No meeting next month.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. The next meeting is in August. No meeting in July. Yeah, recess until July. Thank you. Oh,
Extra Monday. You can text her now.
I wants to borrow that for like, almost road safety out.
Well,
Well, she's been gone. They're higher rate.